You're also
Yeah.
covered by the U.S. consulate if something
Ah,
ever happens. So something else to know, if you are in another country, depending on, I wouldn't even say depending on where you are, it's always good to register with the local consulate. Just let them know you're
oh,
there. You never know what's going to happen. If something is to happen, they are required to come and extract you.
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance-based private therapy practice and a multi-six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey.
so your practice is all online. You love to travel. Now what? I'm so excited to announce the Traveling Therapist course waitlist is open for signups. I've put together a comprehensive course showing you how to travel the world, fund your traveling obsession, and still see your clients. In this course, you'll learn from actual traveling therapists that are already making this lifestyle a reality. This bundle course includes 20 plus trainings from therapists that are already doing it. Myself, developing multiple income streams to fund your traveling obsession, Patrick Pasale, how to take 1 week off every single month, Amber Lyda, how to have an online therapy practice and travel the world. She's the expert in this. Lisa Lovelace, how to run an online group practice and work from anywhere. Janine Wolf, seeking peer support while you're on the road. Megan Gunnell, how to scale your practice up to earn more income so you can do more traveling and enjoy the places you're actually visiting. Jenny Schottmiller, business deductions while you're traveling. Cindy Gonzowski, how to manage different relationship styles while you're traveling. Jen Hyatt's talking about how to navigate time zones and stay sane. She was actually navigating, I think, 3 or 4 time zones at the same time at one point. She's an expert in this. So there's so many trainings, I can't even list them all here, but I hope you'll hop on the wait list. People that are signed up as early birds on the wait list are going to get access to prizes and bonuses. So I hope you'll hop on the list. The link is in the show notes. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Katrina Haynes from HaynesHelp.com. This woman is amazing. She's going to give you guys some really great information. But before we get started, Katrina, I'd love if you would just share some information about yourself and what you do and how you can help people like me who are digital nomads traveling all around.
Sure. So again, my name is Katrina Haynes. I'm a CPA with over 20 years of experience, and I specialize in U.S. expatriate and foreign national tax issues. So specifically working with taxpayers that are U.S. domiciled, and we'll talk about that later, but live and work outside of the United States. And I've worked for a lot of the global firms, so Ernst & Young, Arthur Andersen, Deloitte, and worked with all of the global firms at some point, helping them and their clients stay in compliance. But I also work with individuals and tax practitioners, helping them and their clients get into compliance deal as it relates to these issues.
That's so interesting. So on top of individuals, like you're saying, you also help corporations like that maybe have people placed around the
Yes.
world. Wow.
Yeah. So just because a lot of times there's things that you don't think about as it relates to moving people around, and the tax implications, of course, but just logistically little things. So at one point in my career, I ran a global mobility program for a pharmaceutical company, and they sent over a large family to, I want to say it was Singapore, and they wanted to get them a car. So we're very American. We're thinking we need an SUV. You've got a family of 5. They were like, no, you get a bike.
Oh.
You walk everywhere you go, and you get a bike if you can't walk it, or some sort of public transportation.
Wow.
And just those little things, or even just going over to Europe and trying to get the equivalent of what we consider a standard SUV, which is what you would think you would need for a family of 5 in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
You might be hard pressed to find something larger than a Prius, depending on where you're going. And if you do, how much more expensive is that going to be? And,
Wow.
things like gas is going to be higher. Do your children even speak the language? Are they going to be able to go to a traditional local school? Are you going to have to put them in an international school? How much
Wow.
does that cost? Because it's expensive. So just like things like that people don't even think about. They get so excited and caught up in the prospect of living overseas, and they don't think through the logistics of what is that actually going to look like for me and my
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't even think of half of that until you just said it. So,
Yeah,
oh my
you'd
gosh.
be I could tell you some stories. People who,
Oh, I
they
bet.
wanted to ship their when I was running the program, they wanted to ship their pets, which the company did allow you to ship up to domestic pets, and that would include a cat, a dog, a rabbit, and that was it. No aquariums, no horses, no and these came up. Well, what about my horses? My daughters have riding horses. Why can't we bring them into China? Because you
Oh my gosh. Because you
because we're
can't.
not
You're
paying
just
for
not
them.
allowed to.
Yeah. No, we're not. Like, you know how long that dog's gonna have to sit in quarantine? And this is pre-COVID just to get into the country? No, we're not
Oh my
shipping a horse
gosh.
over.
Could you imagine? Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
god. I had one client, and I know this is getting off topic, but I had
That's okay.
one who had a specific breed of dog. I can't remember what kind of dog it was, but the dogs travel under the plane. And for whatever type of dog it was, they were very sensitive to. They're in the cargo, so it's temperature controlled, but it's not like it is it's not as comfortable as is in the regular part of the plane. And they were
Yeah.
too big to be carry on, so they couldn't bring them on the regular plane, and they were like, our dogs are not going to make it. Our dog, it'll be too hot for them,
Wow.
because they were in
Mm.
LA and they were going into Japan, and that time of year they were like, it's going to be too hot, and our dogs aren't going to make it. So we ended up having them drive. I mean, literally looking at the maps, they had to drive from Los Angeles into Phoenix at that, like,
Wow.
on a certain day and time, to get them, just because the temperature was dropping, it would drop enough so that they could get to altitude without the dog passing.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
That
I
is
did
wild.
not like that job. And I didn't. I realized how much very quickly I dislike people dealing with stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is crazy. I bet you do have 1,000
Oh
stories
my
about
gosh.
just
I
the
gotta get
most unusual circumstances and trying to make it work.
yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes,
That is amazing.
yes.
Oh my gosh. All right. So, okay. So I don't even really know where to start with this, but so basically, me, I'm a traveling therapist, right? And the people that listen to this podcast are traveling therapists. So there's a wide range, right? There's people that just want to go to Europe for a couple of weeks. There's people that want to live 6 months here, 6 months there. There's people that just want to move internationally and, maybe keep an address in the United States. So I guess maybe we start with like the person that's just maybe going for like 3 months or 6 months or something like that to another country, and they're wanting to keep a residence here. How do you even start to assess that? Like what do we need to know, like taxes wise, address wise? Like how do we go about that?
So the first thing is that if you are a U.S. citizen, whether you were born a citizen or you're a naturalized citizen or a green card holder, then you are going to be subject to tax in the United States on your worldwide income, even if you never set foot in the United States during the year.
Wow.
So it does not matter where you physically are located. I always liken the IRS to, like, if you remember those Lifetime movies where there's some sort of disgruntled ex that just keeps popping up over and over and over again. That's kind of how the IRS is. They're not going to let you out of your filing requirement. They're going to keep popping up. They're going to show up. They're going to send you notices. They want their money. They want you. Even if there's no money, they want you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the thing that people always need to consider. There's also other requirements outside of just your regular filing requirements, outside of just filing your US tax return. You could
Okay.
potentially have what's called an FBAR, a report of foreign bank of financial reporting requirement, which is even more, it's very simple to do. It's very easy to disclose, and it's also it's very user friendly. It's probably one of the simplest forms to complete and file. The issue is a lot of people don't know about it. They don't know what to report, and they don't know how to get into compliance. That
Mm,
particular form alone, it's issued by the Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So the Department
wow.
of Treasury is the parent company, governmental entity of the IRS. So the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, and the IRS are like sister organizations, right?
Wow.
Failing to file that form could subject you to interest and penalties up to at least 50% of what your account balances are, plus
Oh,
criminal penalties, plus prison time. And it tends to be on average about a year and a day in federal prison, which, if anybody knows anything about federal prison, you do not get time served. You do not get to leave early. So if you get a year and a day,
wow.
you're doing a year and a day in federal
Oh my
prison
gosh.
for failing to file a disclosure form. It's not even a tax form, it's a disclosure form. So there's other
Wow.
things that you could have to additionally report. There's other penalties and things, and it gets more it can get much more complicated. So there's
Wow.
there's that part of it. If you are self-employed, meaning you run your own business and you're not a dependent worker, meaning you don't get a W-2. So if you're self-employed, you would get a 1099, or you may not get anything because it's just you. Or if you're running your own LLC or something like that, then there's also another reporting on the IRS's Form 8858, which is where you are disclosing the fact that you are operating a foreign branch of a U.S. business. Now, you may say, I don't have a business. I don't even have an
Oh,
LLC. I'm just sitting over here and I'm self-employed with my laptop. Well, technically, you are operating a foreign business. You,
wow.
as a U.S. person sitting in the U.S., have a U.S. sole proprietorship. Taking
Mm-hmm.
that same U.S. body, putting it in a foreign country, you are now operating a foreign branch of a U.S. business, and you have a separate disclosure with a $10,000 minimum penalty if you don't disclose this information. And again, it's not
Oh,
that there's extra tax, it's just getting the reporting piece right, because it can be difficult and it can be complicated. So,
wow. Oh my gosh.
and,
So
and
that's
yeah,
so what is there like a time limit on is that like if you only live internationally and you're not living in the United States at all, or is that like 6 months you're away, or like
it
it's
depends. If you are
oh,
overseas, then the FBAR is going to apply.
oh wow.
If the FBAR applies if you open up a bank account overseas. And I don't know, I mean, so I'm not going to make assumptions that you guys are into tax law as much as I am.
No.
So there's there's a new, well, not new, but within the last decade or so, there's been a new set of regulations referred to as FATCA, Financial Account Tax Compliance, or something along those lines.
Okay.
Act. And what it did is it forced withholding requirements on international entities as it relates to U.S. taxpayers. I've read the regulations a long time ago, but the way it was written was it was for companies to withhold to U.S. companies, the way it was written.
Uh-huh.
What
Okay.
happened, the trickle down was that if I am a US person and I'm investing in, let's say, a foreign mutual fund, and I have interest or dividends in that foreign mutual fund, then that foreign bank or financial institution has to withhold US income tax on those payments and report them to the United States. So whenever you get a
Hmm.
US 1099 or US W-2, there's a copy that you keep as the person receiving it. There's a copy that the issuer keeps. There's a copy that goes to the IRS. That's how they know if
Wow.
you haven't filed a tax return, because they have copies of these forms.
Hmm.
With FATCA, we are putting international entities, foreign financial institutions and non-foreign financial entities, into that same place that we would the respective U.S. entity, and we are making them paymasters, U.S. paymasters, and requiring them to withhold and remit U.S. tax as it relates to U.S. people. So now, there used to be, when I was growing up as an accountant, you would always take your money to Grand Cayman or Switzerland or somewhere, one of those
Huh.
countries where you could hide your money. The IRS didn't have any visibility to it because it's overseas and it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
work with some of those countries. Now, if I go into Grand Cayman, or if I go to Switzerland, because they got hit first, they're going to
Yeah.
ask for my U.S. passport. They don't know who I am. If I walk
Oh.
in there, it does not matter what I look like or what my accent is. They're going to ask for my U.S. passport because they have an agreement with the U.S. that says they are going to identify every U.S. person. They are going to withhold and remit on all of my transactions. So now, if I don't report
Whoa.
that I've got that Swiss bank account like I hadn't been for the last 20, 30 years, they're already going to know because the Swiss bank would have told them before I even filed my tax. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sitting here like, oh my God.
So that's before we even start talking about the taxation. The foreign bank
Yeah.
account is before we even start talking about. So if I go over there for 3 months and I'm like, I need to transfer some money here. Let me go open a bank account. Bam, we've
Yeah.
got an FBAR filing requirement already. Now there are
Wow.
thresholds, of course, but just something that you need to consider. Now, if I'm only going to be there for 3 months, the biggest issue I'm going to have to deal with, because again, the US side, I'm in. I'm Lifetime movie. The man is
Yeah.
chasing me, like I'm all in on the US side. The
Yeah.
problem then becomes, did I create a taxable presence in my host location? So not only do I have to deal with the US tax ramifications, am I going to have a filing requirement? Should I have been remitting local local tax, local cantonal, depending on where I am, or federal cantonal, depending on where I am? Am I subject to Social Security tax in that jurisdiction? Because that's a possibility as well. If we're self-employed, we pay self-employment tax on our Schedule SE. If you are in a country that does not have what's called a totalization agreement, then you could be subject to social tax in that jurisdiction and in the United States as well. So even if you're only there for a couple of months, you could be subject to social tax locally and subject to social tax continuing to be, because again, you're going to have to pay on that Schedule SE. Now, there's ways around this, but a lot of times it depends on how long you're going to be there, how much social tax are you paying in each jurisdiction, and which social tax entity do you have a closer connection to. It doesn't make sense for me to come out of the US social tax system for 3 months. It's going to make more sense for me to try to exempt myself from the social tax jurisdiction of the host location, right?
I see.
Here's another issue.
Okay.
So now I'm over here.
Let me have it.
Yeah. I'm over here. I've got the tax implications. I've got the FBAR filing requirement. I've got the social tax implications. Let's say I'm running a multi-million-dollar business and I pick up my laptop. It's just me. I pick up my laptop and I go over to I'll say Senegal.
Okay.
And I decide to work there, and I'm working there for a couple of months, and I decide to stay there for 6 months. If I do not establish my business and register my business in Senegal based on whatever the local law is, they can potentially I can potentially create what's called a permanent establishment, which is a fixed place of business.
Okay.
So it's the same thing it's very similar to what I just said about having a foreign branch. But let's just say I work for a company like Merrill Lynch, and I take my laptop and I go to Senegal and I sit down and I start working. What I could have potentially do is I could have, in essence, created a branch of Merrill Lynch in Senegal, assuming, there probably is one, but assuming there isn't one, and they can reach back to Merrill Lynch headquarters and say, Katrina makes you guys 20% of your income. We're going to tax 20% of your global income, and it is now subject to tax in Senegal. So let's say I make $10 million a year, and while I'm in Senegal working, this is me personally as an LLC, I make 10 million a year. I've got therapists all over the world, and I'm sitting in Senegal, and I personally only make 50,000. I file a tax return and in Senegal report that 50,000 that I personally made while I'm sitting there, which would be correct. If I've created a permanent establishment, they can say, no, actually, you're the owner of a $10 million business. That $10 million is subject to tax here.
Oh my God. Yeah. So even if I'm just like hanging out there, I'm not seeing residents in that country, and I'm only seeing customers and doing business in the United States virtually, that still applies.
You are subject to tax based on where you are physically working when you do the work. Not where the payments are made, not where the customers or the clients are made. It's where you are physically working. So yes, it is very possible that could be an issue. Plus, if you're there on vacation, you don't have the right to work in that country. So if you're there just visiting, you should be visiting. You don't have the right to work in that country. So you could be violating immigration law. There was this lady, and I wish I knew her name. I want to say she was in Bali, or the Maldives. I can't remember which one. And she started this podcast. Oh my God, this is terrible. About how you can live and work in Bali, and you don't need you don't have to register. You don't have to do anything. You can just come with your laptop. And the government saw her and said, no, you can't. You're actually violating local law. And they kicked her out of the country.
Are you serious?
Yeah. She's like, oh, you can just come here, bring your laptop. You can be self-employed. It's so great. That's why be careful what you see on social media about stuff like this, guys.
God,
talk to somebody.
That's why I've got you here today.
Yeah, I have friends all the time that'll say, oh, I heard something about it's always people who own LLCs. Just some of the most random stuff. I'm like, that's guys, no.
Not true.
or it's you're really bending the tax law, and is it worth it? Because you're not going to get that big of a benefit of like that's not the way the law was written. Yes, technically you probably could do that, but it's not going to save you that much money, or it's not going to like you're going to have a bigger headache trying to prove this than you are just leaving it alone. Like I have a friend who was trying to hire her young dependent children to work in her business, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
talking about her kids are under 10, and you can do
Mm.
that. You don't have to deal with the same labor laws as you would a traditional person working for a traditional company if they're your
Wow.
children and if it's your home-based business. But what I was explaining to her is because she was like, you can get this tax deduction. She saw this lady on YouTube and she was really,
Oh, no.
and I was like, first of all, what is she selling?
Good point.
You'd be like, what is she selling? Is she selling tax services? Which she was not. So I'm like, you need to be wary of someone who's not going to be able to represent you in front of the IRS in the event that this goes poorly, telling you what to do. Okay,
Mhm.
so just kind of high
Absolutely.
level. Somebody who does not have any is not going to be able to stand in front of the IRS next to you and defend that position. Be very wary about what they're saying you can and cannot do because these people have nothing to lose, right? I was like, also, yes, you can do that, but you have to put them on payroll, meaning
Yeah.
you have to transfer money into a separate account that they have access to that you may or may not have access to because they're minors, and you have to withhold payroll tax. So you got to withhold FICA, Social Security, Medicare, federal, state. They're in Pennsylvania, so you would have to withhold local. You have to pay self-employment or unemployment tax on them for federal and state. All of this to give them $100 every other month for cleaning their room. You try to make it a
Wow.
tax
Yeah.
deduction. That's not worth it.
It's not worth
Give them the $100 and call it a day.
it.
It's not worth it.
That's
Like by the
hilarious.
time you pay, I mean, I'm like, it's going to cost you the cheapest payroll software is going to cost you $40 a month.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not.
Mhm.
Plus, you have to pay them and pay the taxes on all. Just leave it alone.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so all right. So like let me give you an example, right? I did a podcast with somebody earlier that is in Mexico for 3 months, right? She's seeing her clients that she's licensed in New York, seeing her clients. Is that a taxable presence then if she's down there? I mean, she didn't open a bank account, but I mean, she's just like working and living for like 3 months in Mexico and then she's coming back. So
Yeah.
would she like what would the steps be? Does she need to research in Mexico what she needs to pay and like how do you even
Correct.
do that? Just
Correct.
curious. Okay.
That's a good question because
Okay.
I've never been in that situation. Whenever, full transparency, whenever I've traveled overseas, I've traveled on, I'll call it a package for lack of a better term, meaning that I had a company supporting me and they handled all the tax implications. So they handled my immigration, they handled my travel, they handled everything. I literally showed up, I had my visa, I was ready to work. They took care of all of that. That being said, I worked for accounting organizations. I would expect them to do that because that's kind of their bread and butter is to make sure that we are legally
Yes.
compliant from a tax perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Traveling by myself, I would
Yeah.
say there are a lot of people that you can contact to get a consultation before you actually go down there. If you are
Okay.
going for, if you have nowhere to turn, I would
Yeah.
say any one of the big four public accounting firms is going to have an office anywhere you could possibly think of. And
Mm.
they tend to have on each of their websites their contacts in each jurisdiction and just call and ask them. I mean, they're
Okay.
pretty quick to answer. I mean, they may tell you if you need a consultation. If you start talking about setting up a business and things like that, they're going to probably pump the brakes. So you're going to have to engage them at least to have that conversation. But
Mm.
they will be able, and a lot of times they'll put together. They call them country summaries. So if
Okay.
PwC has them,
Oh.
KPMG has them, Ernst and Young has it, or EY, I can't remember if they're EY or Ernst and Young anymore, but they have them. You can go to the international area of their website and look
Mm.
for the country summaries. They typically have something about expatriates just because they deal with a lot in expatriates. When do you become taxable? When are you, because there are also preferable expatriate tax regimes. So I
Mm.
may be able to go to Mexico and live there and not have to pay tax for I think I want to say in like Portugal it's like 4 or 5 years before you become a tax resident.
Oh.
You know
Oh
what I mean?
wow.
So there are things that can
Yeah.
happen. You just have to know that they're there. And you have to declare yourself, say, hey, I'm here. I'm not a resident,
Mm.
but I'm here so that
Okay.
you don't get in trouble for being there or and not being registered properly. And then they may exempt you from tax for like 5 years,
Okay.
just depending on the
Wow.
country. But
Right.
I know Portugal is like that just because I have a lot of clients in Portugal. But in Mexico, I would say make sure that you are looking to connect with someone locally. Also, do a Google search for expat communities in that jurisdiction that you're in.
Hmm.
A lot of them, there's a lot of chat rooms and boards that are out there where people
Hmm.
will say, "Hey, I'm an expat living in Mexico. What do I need to know?" And people will tell you, "Oh, here's some people I would refer you to get your taxes done. Here's what you need to know. Here, you don't have to worry about this for a couple of years." Again, be wary of people that do not have a designation telling you what to do, but it'll give you some good ideas or at least
Hmm.
some resources as to where to start. The
Yeah.
expat communities tend to, especially the U.S. expat communities, tend to kind of stick together pretty tightly around the world, and there's a
Right.
lot of good people there that can kind of guide you if you don't have anywhere else to go.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great tip. Absolutely. Now, does your company do workups like that? Like if somebody wanted to come to you, or is that better to go with those bigger firms you were talking about instead?
Yeah, I focus on anything that's US based, anything
Oh,
into or
I
out of
see.
the US. So if
I got you.
you are just because the ability to successfully navigate the rules for over 200 different countries and localities,
Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
wouldn't be able to. Now, there are some things I can tell you generally, especially with the countries that I deal with quite a bit. A lot of the
Hmm.
European countries, Australia, China, Japan, things like that. Some of the South American countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, of course, Canada, things like that. There's a lot of things that I can tell you just based on having a lot of experience in those countries. But once you start getting into other countries, or any country, you probably need somebody with expertise. It takes a lot to stay compliant on just the part of the Internal Revenue Code that I'm familiar with, let
Uh-huh.
alone, knowing that for countries all over the world.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm just curious, like what would you advise somebody to do? Would you advise them? I know you and I met another time, recorded another episode, and we were talking about um, like establishing residency in some of those states that don't have income tax, like South Dakota, Florida. I think you said, what was the
Texas,
other one? Vermont,
Washington,
Delaware. Oh yeah,
Texas, Washington, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if somebody, wanted to go travel internationally for 6 months and not have a home base here, would you advise to just go ahead and get one of those type addresses and work from that position? Or
Potentially. It just depends on
okay,
their goals overall. If you're only gonna be gone
yeah,
for 6 months, that's a lot of work to
true.
establish yourself.
Hmm.
If you're going to be gone indefinitely, then that's probably the move to make. It's to reestablish yourself in a state that doesn't have an income tax or break your local state residency if you're able to do that as well. But
Okay.
it just depends on your intent. Some people do not want to give up their U.S. citizenship, which that is an option too. If you decide I'm never coming back, you can give up your U.S. citizenship. You
Oh wow.
need to obtain citizenship elsewhere, not necessarily citizenship. You need to be able to be eligible for a passport in another country because if you just decide
Oh
you want to give up your citizenship, they're going to take your passport. They're going to take about $2,300 off of you,
wow.
and then you're done. But you got to leave. You can't
Wow,
stay here.
you're out of here.
Yeah, you got to go. So where are you going to go? You don't have a passport. So
Oh
you
my gosh,
probably,
right.
yeah, you need to establish citizenship elsewhere. Not necessarily citizenship, but you have to establish yourself as a tax resident or a resident somewhere in another country where you can get a passport and then surrender your U.S. citizenship if that's what you want to do. Now, keep in mind, depending on how much money you have, the IRS, again, crazy lifetime movie person, may hold on to you and require that you file tax returns for the next 10 years, even if you no longer have citizenship. That happens if you surrender your green card, and that also happens if you give up your citizenship. If your income tax is over a certain amount for the last 5 years, it's adjusted annually for inflation, but it's like $175,000. If your tax liability is over that on average over the last 5 years. So again, let's say you were in poverty for 5 years and then all of a sudden you hit the lottery and now you want to surrender or you want to get out of US taxation, then you hitting the lottery that one year is going to take you over the threshold and they're going to say you're leaving for the purposes of tax evasion and you're going to have to file a US tax return, even though a non-resident tax return, and you're going to have to report any US source income for the next 10 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I have a client
Wow.
doing that now. She's very wealthy, good for
Oh,
her. And she divorced her husband. That was her only tie to the United States, was her husband. He had a
mm.
green card, so she got a green card, and then they got divorced. She got rid of her green card, and because of her divorce settlement and the assets that she has to file a 1040 non-resident return for the next 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. That is crazy.
yeah. So, but that's an
I'm glad
option.
there's
It's
people like you that
yeah.
know this stuff.
I mean, there's an option. It's not necessarily an option most people want to take, just because
Mhm.
the U.S. passport and the ability to travel internationally and specifically to and from the United States, it carries a lot of weight. You're also
Yeah.
covered by the U.S. consulate if something
Oh,
ever happens. So something else to know: if you are in another country, depending on, I wouldn't even say depending on where you are, it's always good to register with the local consulate. Just let them know you're
oh,
there. You never know what's going to happen. If something is to happen, they are required to come and extract you.
mm,
So I lived and worked in India for a while. I wasn't in an unsafe part of India, but there was a location in that city that I lived in that had a lot of active Al Qaeda cells, and they made us very aware of that. So
mm.
they made sure we registered at the consulate so that if there was a bombing or anything like that, that they were required to come and get us out. So
Oh
you
my
never know
gosh.
what's going to happen. Just make sure you especially if you're going to be there for a long time, let them know you're
Yeah.
there.
Wow. Oh, I just got
Yeah.
goosebumps. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
You
Could you
never know
imagine?
what's going to happen. I actually, when I was
Ooh.
there wasn't a bombing where I was, but there was a bombing. It was like, it was, India is a very big country. It was like 16
Yeah.
hours away. But my
Oh,
family wakes me up in the middle of the night and they're like, and I'm like, that, you know how far away that is? I was asleep. I'm fine.
yeah. Oh
Thank you
my
for the
gosh.
concern. But
That's funny.
I mean, you can sleep well because you know that if something is going to happen, you probably
Wow.
would hear from the consulate before anything else.
That's amazing. That's such
Yeah.
good
And you
advice.
don't
I
think
never
about
thought
it.
of that.
You never think
No.
about it. You're like, oh, I'm going over. You never think about it until it's too late to think about it. So it's
Hmm.
just one of those things to, to be, you got to be careful out there. Everybody, I was going to say everyone isn't safe as the US, but depending on
Hmm.
your
Depending
perspective
on
of
where you are
safety,
in the
yeah,
US.
yeah. May not be that safe here either. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is such a good tip. So would someone register with the consulate just if they're there for a week, like on vacation, or more of you're
Depends
going to
on
be
where you
there?
are. Depends on where you are.
Wow.
Depending on
Gosh.
where you are and the economic climate of that country, you might want to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah. Just even on
Wow.
vacation, just let them know
Yeah.
you're there. It doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Just say,
Wow. So what is it? Just a phone call? You just say, "Hey,
mhm.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Here's my passport."
Yeah. You
Okay.
might even be able to do it on online and just let
Wow.
them know, depending on, I haven't done it in a very long time, but I haven't
Hmm.
COVID. Haven't been anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, you just let them know, "Hey, I'm here." It could be just a phone call. Now, I mean, obviously they would have some idea just from immigration records, but that
Hmm.
is not as organized as people would like to think it is. It's not
Hmm.
as easy to get that information, and once you get it, it's not nearly as organized as people would like to think. So it's just
Yeah.
to be really diligent. You might want to do something like that, especially if you're in a country where there's a lot of military
Mhm.
activity.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like we used to go to Punta Cana all the time, and
Yeah,
there's
that is
this image.
exactly where I was thinking. Yes.
Yes, but you know that immigration form, it's like
Mhm.
$10 and you give it to
Mhm.
them and they put it in a stack like this big
Mhm.
that's like falling over, half are on the floor. It's like
Yeah.
there's no record of me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're never gonna find me if they're looking through this pile
Exactly.
of stuff.
On the floor. Yeah, they're not gonna find you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, love Punta Cana, but that's
Yeah.
the first thing that popped in my mind when you said
Yeah.
that. It's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So let me see. So what would be your advice, like step by step for somebody like just starting out with this thing? Would they schedule an appointment with somebody like you and just do like a consult to like get any advice, to get information about what to look out for, to like assess
Mhm.
their specific situation so you can give advice like don't open a bank account there, or
Yeah.
do open a bank account, like
Yeah.
what would somebody do?
That's definitely a good start just to get an idea of what you're in for. I'm only going to be able to tell you high level what's going to happen in the other country. I can tell you, you might not be a
Mhm.
resident for a while and so on and so forth, and might I'll be able to direct you to someone who can provide you with a little bit more support in the way of support as far as what's happening locally. But you definitely need to kind of assess your own personal situation and risk factors before before taking that move. Also, I just kind of want to point out that the majority of the countries around the world have a much higher tax system than we do. Brackets
Mm,
are much, much higher and they get high really fast.
wow.
So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that as well, especially if you are on a pay as you earn type system. So if you're
Mm.
required to make withholding deposits in that local jurisdiction, you could be in a situation where you're paying a very lot of of a very lot. That's very
That's a
a
lot.
whole lot of money, yeah, in taxes because you're
Yeah.
not prepared. So I had
Yeah. Mm.
working with one client, we did a lot of stock transactions, and the way it worked is they would withhold U.S. tax, and then we would also withhold the foreign tax as well. And
Oh.
because of the country combination, his tax rate was 90%. So he would only get 10% until the tax returns were filed.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, because it was like a
Wow.
55% tax in wherever he was living, and then the US was 35%. Yeah.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah. So just to be aware of that sort of thing. People, I mean, like I said, the US, people complain about the US tax system. We
Yeah.
overall tend to have one of the lower tax systems and one of the lower top tax rates. There are
Hmm.
some that are smaller, but it's not nearly what you would think. Most of the tax systems are progressively much higher, and they tax you at higher rates on lower buckets of income. So
Mm, mm,
just
mm-hmm.
something to think about, just to understand kind of what your tax burden is going to look like. And that's not even looking at, let's say you are in a Pennsylvania and you've got to file a Pennsylvania local, or let's say you go to Switzerland and you've got to pay Swiss tax, and then you've got a cantonal tax, or you're in Canada and you have to do the same. And now you're potentially paying tax on the same income 5 different times, not to mention
Uh,
if you have to deal with the issues of having a permanent establishment and roping in that additional tax related to your business. Yeah.
oh my
It can
gosh.
get complicated. It's
You're
definitely
making my
best to
head spin again.
yeah. So
What'd
I'm
you say?
here. I said that's
Yeah.
I mean, it's just best to have an idea before you actually move. Even if you are going on a package. I did a consultation for somebody this week.
Mhm,
They're
mhm,
going on a package, and I was like, "Well, make sure that this is included in your package. This is where you're going. Make sure that this is what you're getting. That you're getting
mm.
some sort of tax protection or tax equalization so that you don't get hit with a 90% tax. Figure, that out. What kind of, you know, are you getting a cost of living allowance? Are you getting hazard pay? If you are on a package and you're going somewhere that's kind of dangerous, things like that. Just to be aware of that. Most people, they don't deal with it all the time, so you just get excited about going. Is this even a good package?
Mhm.
Let's see. You know,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. It's so complicated.
yeah. It's a good time.
Oh,
It's a
oh
good time.
my gosh. Okay. So I think we covered a lot of stuff. I'm just wondering, is there
Definitely.
anything else like really common questions that maybe I haven't even thought of that you get from people, or have we pretty much covered all of that?
People always ask me the best countries to go to.
Oh,
And
great.
that is going to depend on what best means for you. Everyone
Uh,
always asks me, "What's the best country to go to? Where should I retire? What's the best country?" I mean, they have expat magazines that publish a list of 5 every year, and it changes.
yeah.
During the year of publication, there will be 10 publications, and they all have completely different answers for
Uh,
completely different reasons. So, I always tell people, don't live your life according to your tax situation. Just live your life, but be aware of
mm,
what the tax implications are going to be so that you can plan properly. And there are some things that you may have to deal with. If you're, for example, if you have a US retirement plan, if
mm,
you're going to a country that doesn't have an income tax treaty, you may have to deal with paying tax locally on the distributions, even if you're not earning any income per se, but you're taking
wow.
retirement distributions while you're living and working overseas. You got U.S. Social Security payments, and you're say you're doing contract work after you retire, you may be subject to to local tax on those Social Security payments that you're receiving from the U.S. You can
Yeah.
sever your relationship with the U.S., meaning give up your passport and still collect your Social Security that is owed to you living and working outside of the United States. I have a couple of clients that do that. They were green
Wow.
card holders. They paid into the Social Security tax system for 40 quarters, and they're drawing Social Security as a non-citizen, non-resident of the United States.
Really?
So yeah,
Wow.
so it's possible to do that, but then you still got to file a tax return every year because you have to report your U.S. Social Security payments every single year. So my advice is live your life, do what's going to work for you, but just make sure that you're aware of what that's going to look like so that you can
Mhm.
make minor tweaks if need be, so that you are not financially crippled by a move like
And have Katrina on speed dial.
that.
Right?
Yeah, I'm here to help. I can get you so far, and then we'll see what else happens.
Oh my gosh. Wow. This is so awesome. This has been so helpful. And I think it's going to give people a lot of stuff to think about because really, I mean, in my mind, I just go to,
Yep.
Portugal for 3 months. I don't even think about it. I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
seeing my clients and, I've got my address in the United States. I'm not even considering this stuff. So this is really helpful. And I'm definitely going to be calling you the next time I decide to travel
Yeah.
internationally for some time.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's okay. Just
Yeah.
be aware of it, of what the rules are, because some countries are more aggressive. There are a lot of countries out there that are not as friendly to us as
Mhm.
Americans as
Mhm.
others. Most of the European countries, it may be okay, but you got to be careful, because
Yeah.
when it's bad, it's really bad. So I tell the story all the time. I had a client that lived in the United States, and I might have told the story before, and worked in the UK,
Mhm.
negotiating the sale of his business, not his business personally, but the business he worked for. He was
Okay.
traveling back and forth between London and Indianapolis, where he lived, to negotiate the sale of his business. Sells
Uh,
the business for millions and millions of dollars. It's
mm.
all in the newspapers. He comes home, collects his commission, he goes on about his life. About
Oh
2 years
my
later, he gets a letter from Inland Revenue, the UK taxing authority, saying he owed them £800,000 based on what they projected his portion of the sale to be and the number of days that they knew he was in the UK based on
Oh,
immigration records. Okay.
wow.
So we had to go back and, first of all, pay it, because it was, I mean, we have no proof that this isn't what he did know, because we never kept track, we never registered, we never did anything, we being the company, that they were
Yeah.
supposed to do to protect him from this liability. So first of all, pay it. Fortunately,
Wow.
he was able to pay it, because I mean, they knew how much money he made. It was in the newspaper.
Yeah. Oh
It was in
my
the
gosh.
newspaper. Oh my
Oh
god.
my gosh.
Oh
Oh.
gosh. And then we had to go back and amend his tax returns to take a foreign tax credit on those taxes that he paid relating to those years. And it got even more complicated because he married and divorced and then remarried during that 2 year period. So we had to get permission from his ex wife to even touch those tax returns to do the
Oh.
amendment. But
Oh
she
my
was good
gosh.
about it. She was like, I don't,
Well, that's good.
yeah, I mean, but that was just, I was like, we have to get, because it's her tax return too. We can't just go in and amend the tax return without her permission. So we had to get his current wife, his ex wife, and him, get all those returns amended to kind of get some of that money back from the US. It was a whole mess. I had another client, well, this is a client we had to fire. They were a
Oh.
CEO of a very big internet company that literally you could Google his location at any point in time, and he did
Oh
not want to report his foreign presence. I'm like, I'm looking at you right now. Like, I can see where you are.
gosh.
There's
Oh my
no way
gosh.
I'm going to be comfortable signing a return saying you weren't out of the country.
Yeah.
I can see you.
Oh my God. You're streaming
Yeah,
live from
exactly.
Paris.
Oh my
Obviously you're
gosh.
there.
What are you doing? So, but no, I don't want to. We just don't need to report that to the IRS. I can't do
Oh my
that.
gosh.
So, and I had a televangelist once come into the United States for national,
Wow.
and they were like, should we get tax ID, individual taxpayer identification numbers? The number you would get if you don't get a social security number. You only get a social security number if you have the right to work in the United States. So if you have the right to be here, but you don't have the right to work, you would get an item, because they were coming in the US and they were earning these honorariums and they were selling books and things like that. And I said the same thing. I can Google your calendar. I can see when you're in the US. I have your whole US travel schedule right here.
Wow.
You need to be filing taxes. Even as a non-resident alien, even if we're going to be able to exclude it because we had a treaty with the country it was from, you need to be
Wow.
getting tax IDs. You need to be filing in the US. It's way too easy to see when you were here and why you were here and how long you were here and what states you were in. You definitely need to be doing it. So they got, I mean, they're pretty on, they got into compliance pretty quickly. But that other guy, we had to fire
Wow.
him as a client because he just was insistent that he didn't
Right.
want
And you can't
to
work with
do that.
that.
And I can't sign a
Wow.
return that I know is full of lies. So,
Fraudulent.
because
Yeah.
I go
Oh
to
my gosh.
prison, back to that whole thing. I had a conversation with my kid's babysitter. I had to issue her a 1099 because I paid her over $600. And she's like, "Oh, I get paid in cash. I don't file taxes." And I was like, "I didn't hear that. Here's your 1099. No, you're supposed to be
Do
filing
whatever you want to with
on
it.
your worldwide income. So I don't care how you get paid. You're supposed to be filing taxes and paying the
Oh my
taxes.
God.
And
Yeah.
she's like, well, what if you just don't issue me a 1099? I'm like, as a CPA, I get 3 to 5 years in federal prison if I do something that you do on accident. So
Right.
here's that 1099.
Throw it in the trash if you want
Do with
to,
it
but
what
I
you
gave
will.
it to you.
But the IRS knows it's here.
Wow.
So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
incredible. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I bet you have so many stories.
I have so many stories.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Want to hear some good tax stories? Just give me a call. I got a
Okay,
lot of
yeah.
them.
Let's have a party. Yeah.
Good stuff. It's real good stuff. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so, so much. And I know we said at the beginning, but can you just say again, like how to get a hold of you and like
Sure.
how you can help and all that stuff?
Sure. So in addition to helping people one-on-one, I also teach a lot about this stuff. So I have a lot of classes that are available on my website on hayneshelp.com where you can go in and it's like 50-minute, 60-minute snippets that'll just talk to you about specific things: international payroll, tax equalization, U.S. taxpayers living overseas, foreign nationals in the United States, international students, which people don't think about that a lot. Just a whole bunch of different things, Social Security specifically, foreign pensions. I'm just thinking of some cryptocurrency. What happens when you have cryptocurrency and you're an expat? How do you
Oh my
handle
gosh.
things like that? So I would say take a look around there, see what classes are interesting to you, and you can always reach out to me. There's a link to my calendar on my website as well.
And it's hayneshelp.com,
All right.
right? Haynes.
Yep. Haynes Help.
Yeah, you guys, there's about 1 million webinars. Like she's not kidding. It's amazing.
Yes.
So
More to
use
come.
that resource. Yeah, more to come. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh my gosh. It's so needed and so helpful. And thank you so much. Thanks
Oh,
for even
absolutely.
taking the time to do this and just help the
Absolutely.
listeners.
Absolutely. I enjoy chatting. I love talking about tax stuff. I don't know if you
Yeah, I love it. I love hearing you love it because I know nothing, but it's great to have somebody like you that can help us with this. Because I mean, we're therapists, like we don't know anything about. I mean, some people
Yeah.
do. Don't want to generalize, but
Yeah.
generally we're just like in with our clients. We're not trying to like know everything about business and
Exactly.
tax and all that stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you loved this episode, please leave a review.